You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, if you could, please leave us some feedback and a rating from wherever you get your podcasts from. It really does help us out immensely to make a better podcast for you. This is episode 68, where we talk about how shooting is a perishable skill, meaning that the longer you go without practicing, the worse your skills deteriorate. So we talk about how often to practice to keep your skills sharp, and we bring up a few simple drills both with dry fire and live fire that you can use to help accomplish that. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 68 of Range Minded, the perishable skills of the shooting sports. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and as always, I am joined by
Steve Zimmerman,
the one and only from an undisclosed location in Eastern Idaho.
That's right. Completely undisclosed, other than you told him I was in Eastern Idaho.
I didn't tell him the address.
That's okay. I don't even know the address. It's all good.
You just know how to get there.
That's it. That's all you need to know.
That way, if somebody ever actually tried to get your address, you wouldn't be able to tell them.
Just say you drive past that haystack, go right, and then you drive down that dirt road. A couple of turns, you go left. Isn't that how it works?
Somebody's taking notes right now to figure out where you're at.
Well, it's not going to turn out very awesome for them or me. So
no, it sure isn't. So, but yeah, we're going to go back to education a little bit. Our last episode was actually one of my favorite episodes with Jared, the owner of Independence Indoor Shooting.
And if you haven't listened to that episode, maybe pause right now and jump over and listen to that one. And then, because Jared's just an amazing guy, super down to earth, just all around awesome. It was a good episode.
He's one of those people that I was a little tired because it was Friday night when we recorded it, and it's just been a long week, and I'd done some traveling or whatever. But I felt energized and invigorated by the time I left. He's got a really positive vibe that he puts out. And
that's just the way Jared is. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I just told him to be himself. I told him to be himself, and that was it.
Yeah, and you can't really explain it unless you just know Jared and you be like, oh yeah, I understand.
Yeah, because he's super chill too. He's a cool guy. I'm really glad we got to do that. So yeah, If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, maybe pause this one and go listen to that episode because it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think so.
But we're going to get back to education this time, and we're going to be talking about consistent practice with shooting, and how shooting is a perishable skill, and why you should have a regular kind of practice regimen for shooting. And
the reason why I decided to bring this up as a topic is this last Thursday, my son and I decided to go shoot some sporting clays at a outdoor shotgun range here in Idaho Falls, and I completely sucked.
Really?
So there was the way it was set up is there was 14 stations, and all in all, you ended up shooting exactly 100 rounds.
Okay,
that's just the way it was.
Sure.
So it was set up. You could buy a box at Walmart or wherever, and go and shoot 100. It's kind of like golf, right? Like playing 9 holes or something. But,
sure.
Well, this is for men instead. Never mind. So anyway, yeah, out of 100, and this is pretty embarrassing, I got 24.
So you
out of 100 clays.
You not only failed, you got an F minus.
It's pretty bad, and it was super embarrassing. And my son totally outshot me. He was doing pretty good.
Okay, what did he score?
He like 39 or something. So still not even 50%.
Sure,
but he shot pretty good, honestly, in my opinion.
Let's establish a baseline though for sporting clays, your average, kind of sporting clay shooter, because I'll tell you what, I have shot sporting clays exactly once.
It's not like we're going out with the buddies and one of them throws the clay up with a hand throw or anything. No, each stage is designed differently. They come from different directions, different speeds, whether it's coming at you or coming away from you. There was a rabbit, so a grounder that was going along.
Oh wow.
And to put on top of that, the wind was blowing 15, 20 miles an hour.
Which is going to throw you completely off.
Yeah. So there's all these things. Even if it was a perfect day, I don't think I would have shot much better. I just couldn't find the bead, right? I couldn't get a good lead or anything on them. Well,
and you brought up an interesting point before we started, was that you also did not have the right equipment.
True. I have a JM Pro but it's the tactical version. So it'd be more something for like 3 gun,
Sure.
not for certain clays. And it's got a modified choke. So, I mean, but with a shorter barrel than an actual bird gun, you're not going to reach as far.
Well, because mostly,
go ahead.
I was going to say mostly a home defense shotgun is about 18.5-inch barrel. That's kind of your standard, I think, home defense shotgun barrel.
Well, even for like I say, even for 3 gun, you're going to be popping slugs, so you really don't need a long barrel, and it's a shorter shotgun's quicker to swing for up close shots. That's just the way the thing works.
Right, but your average bird shotgun barrel is what, about 28 inches, I would say?
I don't know if I'd go that long, but definitely, longer than 18.
Right. Well, but then so you kind of think about that in terms of pistols too, is, some pistol variants are, 4 inches, 5 inches, 3.5 inches, like just an 1.5 or 2 inches makes a big difference.
It really does. And so, going on with the topic, I brought this tactical shotgun,
right,
which sure looks cool, but it just wasn't doing the job. And luckily for me, I guess later on, I got a shell stuck in the chamber. It just wasn't extracting. It was just too dirty.
Oh, okay.
So I stopped using it, and I was using other guns. Some of the other guns that the guys brought. But I wasn't using the same shotgun every stage. I would just kind of roll through the other 3 shotguns, one different one each stage.
That's a lot of different shotguns.
It totally was. There was a left-hand eject, and there was one guy had a Stoger, the other guy had an 870, and so not the same platform every time.
Not even close.
So not even close. So that's kind of what brought up the thought of tonight's podcast or today's podcast that you got to really train with what you're going to be using. Whether, if you're bird hunting, you're not going to take a little stubby shotgun with you. You're going to take something that's going to keep a pattern.
Right.
Or if you're carrying concealed, you're not going to be, well, I'm sure there's people that do, but chances are you're not going to be carrying your dirty, hairy revolver. You're going to be carrying something that'll do the job, that's easier to conceal, or vice versa. If you're bow hunting, you're not going to be carrying your 22 little handgun.
Right. And so you have to consider the equipment, but you also have to be, you have to know how that equipment works and train with it.
Yes.
And you have to train, period, because, and we talk about training all the time, but even just going to the range, or dry firing, and we'll get into both a little bit, but just staying familiar with the manual of arms of your firearms and maintaining good discipline and just smooth motions and muscle memory. I don't think any of us get to the range, even us, we don't get to the range as much as we'd like. But for me, for example, I found dry fire practice really does help with sight alignment and grip and trigger press and all that. And before any class I'll take or anything like that, or even, the day before a range day or whatever, I'll usually spend 20, 30 minutes just dry firing, kind of getting refamiliarized with whatever I'm bringing to shoot.
Yeah. And it's important. It really is important. I mean, you might think, well, I understand the basics of any manual of arms. I understand the safety rules. What's the difference? But I guarantee you'll notice the difference when you're trying to keep up with the other guys you're shooting with.
Well, and you have firsthand experience about that now.
And you can't hit a damn thing. You're going to know.
Yeah, and you're going to wonder why it is, and it's because you're not, familiar with it. I mean, so I remember one of the first times, I've got my Walther PPQ, which I've had for 5-6 years, and that's my go-to handgun. But you put a Glock in my hand, and I can't shoot it at all. I can put it on paper, but I mean, it's a huge grouping. And then, you switch back to the Walther, and I've done this with all different kinds of pistols, with HK, with SIG. I mean, it's just something to get used to. I remember we tested out the SIG P365 a while ago, and that gun you have to get used to a little bit, but it feels good in the hand. And I think anybody could shoot it competently after a while, but it's not as good as, I can't shoot it as well as what I can with a Walther.
Yeah. Well, and why is that?
Because I'm used to the way, the grip angle of the Walther is, the way that the recoil, operates, the slide on that gun, and the way the sights you look and the trigger and all that, because, everybody talks about in gun reviews, you see the trigger, the trigger does this. There's a little creep. There's a lot of creep. There's, a real thin glass wall. There's a big wall to go to. I'll take up all that kind of stuff. Is different for every single gun. And if you don't know when that's coming, or you don't kind of expect that feel, the gun, that gun's going to go off maybe when you don't expect it, or before or after you think it's going to, and that's going to lead to a shot that is not going to go where you want it to go.
Well, and then you got grip angle, you got, what maybe you talked about the trigger, whether it has a wall or not, but then there's also how much pressure it takes to get the trigger to go, or, the sights might be a different height. There's, you're right, that everything's different. Every gun is different. In fact, I even feel like I pick up one Glock 19 and shoot fine, but I could pick up another Glock 19 and I might not shoot that one as good.
That's
especially
totally
if
possible.
There's custom stuff done.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I mean, it's almost like I'd equate it to like different cars. Like obviously every car is fairly similar in the way it operates, but the different sizes, there's different engine sizes. The dimensions of the car itself are completely different. The way the steering setup is completely different, and you have to get used to it. It's like when you get into a rental car, it's like, I don't know. It takes a little while to get used to it, but same thing with shooting, and whether it's shooting shotguns or rifles or ARs or handguns or what have you. So you have to know your equipment quite well and train with it. And I would say, if you're taking a series of classes, like I've taken the enhanced concealed carry class, the intermediate pistol twice, and most recently the advanced pistol. I thought about, with my enhanced concealed carry, I should probably take my the gun I carry with, just to get used to it. But I ended up actually taking the PPQ just because I know it the best, and I'll be able to shoot the best and most comfortably with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you spent time behind that gun.
Yeah, but that's funny because that also brings up that I should probably spend more time behind my subcompact, my little PPS that I carry as well. So,
yeah, that is important. Whatever you're carrying, and I'm sure we've talked about this probably at length before, but if you're going to carry a gun, whether revolver or semi-auto or whatever, you need to dry fire if it's a new enough gun. Because I kind of get worried about dry firing old firearms, or maybe even rim fires.
Sure.
But if it's a modern handgun, no problem about dry firing it.
No, and that's whether it's rim fire or not.
Yeah, that's right. You're still dry firing fires.
Well, but that's what
what they make. It's just the old school.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. You're right. So snap caps. But what else works really good are those. I can't remember what number, but the sheetrock anchors. You can buy some of the small plastic sheetrock insert anchors. You know what I'm talking about? Oh,
yeah, I know what you're talking about. I didn't know you could use those.
There's one that is like the exact same size, and the rim is just about the same size as the rim on a 22 shell. And you can just put that way cheaper than snap caps.
Yeah, I think that the people who make snap caps know that they're close enough. And to be fair, there's some R&D that goes into them, and to look and feel exactly like rounds and everything, but they can get a little pricey. So, and they do last, but if you really are strapped for cash, I mean, you can't go wrong having snap caps in your firearm, for practice.
Yeah, it is nice for setting up other things. You can set up failures and stuff too, using dummy rounds. It is a good idea to buy some.
Yeah, and I think we probably talked about it too. Is a good drill to have is at the range is have somebody load it up, or you load up 2 different magazines or whatever, and mix dry fire and live fire rounds. And then again, this is at the range only, but and then have them hand you the mag or put the mag in. You don't know what the order is. And then you'll be able to kind of diagnose whether or not you're anticipating that recoil, and, practice holding that gun steadier.
That's right. And it's totally worth it. A lot of people think, it's not the same if you're not pulling the trigger and it goes bang. Well, there's a lot of skills to learn without it going bang. I mean, a lot.
I think it should be the same whether it goes bang or not. That front sight should not move.
No, it should not.
So, but speaking of the range, what are some drills Well, actually, let's take a step even farther back than that. How often do you suggest somebody goes to the range, and how much ammo do you suggest people shoot if they want to maintain the skills that they have?
So that's really subjective because some people can afford to go once or twice a week.
That'd be nice.
And some people can't afford to go hardly at all because ammo is not always the cheapest thing.
Unfortunately not.
But I really think that you can spend 15 minutes a day dry firing and maybe once a week, maybe other week at the range and still get, good quality training and keeping your skills honed, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it takes much. I think it just takes some dedicated time. And so I was going to say maybe every other week, or even if you get to the range once a month, I think would be even, as long as you get there once a month, I think is better than nothing.
Yeah. And I designed a target that's actually at the range. I need to really remember what I had down as a drill, but there's a small target that kind of almost looks like a diver's flag. That had a bunch of different shapes and a pyramid of circles. And that was actually designed for 50 rounds. So you could just buy a box or take a box of ammunition with you and shoot one target. And there were some deliberate, courses of fire that would just go 50 rounds and that's it.
And that's one thing. That's you don't have to spend a lot of money on targets. You don't have to buy a big, huge silhouette. You can, get an 8.5, because I know exactly what the target you designed is. And I think it's on an 8.5 by 11. It's not on a big piece of paper.
No, it's not a big piece of paper.
And then if anybody's ever heard of like the dot torture drill or the consistency drill or anything, you can just Google them and you can find those templates, and they're basically PDFs, and you can print them out at home or at work or wherever. And you can save a couple bucks on targets that way if you really need to.
And I know there's a guy here in Idaho Falls and a guy in Boise that would just bring paper plates, and whether take a Sharpie or something, just mark a couple of dots on a paper plate and send it down. Targets don't have to be expensive, or even sticky notes or postcards or whatever, business cards.
Yeah, in the advanced class, we had a silhouette or like an IDPA cardboard cutout silhouette, but we had a 3x5 card that was right next to it, and we had to shoot the 3x5 card before we even shot the silhouette, and that's all it takes. I mean, you just have to have something to kind of focus on and a target to look at, and as you get better, let's say you have one of those bigger paper plates or whatever, just draw a circle on it and try to stay within that circle. It's you don't have to spend a lot of money on targets to practice.
No, you don't. It's not the target that's the practice. It's the manipulation of the tool that you're using.
Right. And like we talked about earlier, you have to you should be using the right tool for that. I think every time you go to the range, especially if money's tight and you're not, necessarily there to have fun, although shooting obviously is always fun, but if you're there to practice and maintain your skills, you should have a drill or two in mind or know what you're going to do. It's just like if you're going to go to the gym, you should know what your workout routine is going to be or what muscle groups you're going to work that day, rather than just going and kind of freewheeling,
Absolutely. It's way more beneficial.
Yeah.
You get way more out of it.
You'll be able to maintain those skills and even get better in between classes, because we know, I mean, it's easy probably for us to say that, oh, you just go buy a box of ammo and you can take a class or whatever. But, working at the range, we kind of have some perks that make that a little bit easier for us. Or, having to be there, spending time there. It makes life a little bit easier for us in that regard. But, it's kind of like, I would equate it to almost like CPR training or any kind of first aid training, is that, if you spend the time, developing it and maintaining those skills, they're going to pay you back tenfold if you ever need them.
Well, that's the idea, right? Perfect practice makes perfect. So
exactly. So, but when you were first talking about why you wanted to bring this up and make an episode out of this, you talked about how your shotgun failed to extract, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that came down to improper maintenance, honestly.
And so that's a whole other thing that we wanted to talk about too.
Yeah. I'm kind of guilty. So when I first got into firearms, and it really because my first gun was an SKS and I was buying Russian ammunition. And if you guys remember the old school Russian stuff, super corrosive, not good to to leave your gun dirty. And so I cleaned it, my gun, at least every time I went shooting. Sometimes I'd even clean it periodically between shooting times. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's impressive.
So it was always clean, always oiled, and always taken care of. Now, I kind of got apathetic on cleaning my guns after every time shooting, because some of the guns I really wouldn't shoot that much, just a magazine or two out of. But does that make it okay? Probably not.
Well, I mean, so you had your home defense, or a tactical shotgun that you may or may not use for home defense, and it jammed on you. What, heaven forbid if that happens in a emergency situation,
Yeah. Then what? And that's the one difference. So like my carry gun, that has to be clean all the time.
Mm.
Has to be. If you're carrying a gun and you do not clean it after you train with it, in my opinion, you're making what could be a devastating mistake.
Yeah, and not only clean it, but lube it as well to make sure that, it's actually kind of a funny story. So I have we had a couple episodes ago, we talked about the basic AR-15 class that I took with John Rhodes and Leroy. And the first thing we did was we took our ARs apart, and I hadn't cleaned that AR in a while. And so everybody was taking, and I think we even had rental guns that people had, the rental ARs. And everybody's taking theirs apart, and everything's actually pretty clean and well lubed and everything. And I take mine out, and my hands are just completely dirty. I had to take like a dozen paper towels to clean everything off. I wasn't like completely embarrassed, but I was like, man, I need to like step my game up a little bit. So it's good to, the best thing to do, it's just kind of like camping. As soon as you get back from camping, you let all your gear sit in the sun, especially if it was rainy, before you put it away. And so if you kind of adopt the same ritual after shooting, you come home and clean your guns afterwards, I think you can't really ever go wrong with that.
Are you suggesting I should just leave all my guns out in the yard?
Yeah, why not? You live in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like anybody else is going to be around.
That might be like considered baiting though, right?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it could be.
That guy's stealing stuff off my lawn.
Well, you left an SKS, an AK, a shotgun, and half a dozen other guns out there, sir.
I was just letting them sunbathe.
They were drying out. Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? Like if you just clean and lube everything after you're done shooting, then you really never have to worry about it.
Yeah, and it really does. I talked about that corrosive ammo. Too much carbon buildup, especially if now I know some of the rental guns get this way. If you don't have time to clean them, you just throw some oil on them and you keep going. Well, what does lubricant do? Sure, it lubricates. It attracts garbage or not corrosion, but carbon buildup and just gunk.
Sticks to it.
You're not helping the problem just by throwing more lubricant on it.
Right. And it doesn't take all that much to jam up a gun, as you experienced.
Especially a tight fitting gun. Like if it's an AR or a custom 1911 or something like that, it doesn't take much for it to gum up and quit working. And honestly, I think my shotgun was that dirty. I actually kind of swabbed it real quick before we left. But yeah, it, just a little bit of buildup inside that chamber kept it from extracting shells.
Yeah.
And you're right. If I was in a defensive or emergency situation, that could have been a costly mistake.
Right. I mean, these are tools that we're trusting our lives with, and we want to make sure that they're in good working order all the time, just like maintaining a vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to have one of my tools is the reason why, heaven forbid, somebody died that I could have saved, or you know what I mean?
Right. Just like, and again, that actually brings us back to knowing the manual of arms and being familiar with the firearms that you have, because, and maybe I think a lot of people maybe make this argument or whatever. It's like, well, I need to, shoot a bunch of different guns because whenever this happens or whenever the boogaloo happens or whatever, we're gonna, I need to be able to pick up any gun and shoot it and whatever and blah, 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 blah. But that's like, first of all, in my opinion, that's kind of a remote possibility. And second of all, if you can't shoot your own guns well, you're not going to be helping anybody. You're more of a hindrance than anything else. And you may, if you do have a jam, even if you have the cleanest gun in the world, maybe the ammo isn't that good. If you don't know how to clear that on your own gun, or you don't know where that magazine release is exactly with your eyes closed or something, that couple, half a second or a second or whatever could make a big difference in a defensive situation.
A tenth of a second can make a life or death situation change. I mean, you can see it in whether car accidents or whatever. Like, a very short amount of time is really the deciding factor.
Right. And so, being able to know your firearms in and out, eyes closed, stressful situation, I think that's paramount. And that's why, we've recommended it before, training with a timer, because that timer induces a little bit of stress. It's not probably anything close to what it would be in a real life situation. However, it does give you a little bit of that stress response, because we've talked about it a bunch before too, but the different color codes of awareness, and the last thing you want to do is get into code black, which where you freeze up. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a graveyard.
Yeah. You don't want to do that. So let's switch gears and talk about dry fire practice at home, because I think, for the lion's share of people, unfortunately, we can't afford to go to the range every single week and buy ammo. But, there's a lot of dry fire drills, and there's even some tools that are available that you can dry fire at home, and have it almost as close to the real thing as you want, depending on how much money you want to spend.
Yeah, what is that electronic thing that we sell at the store?
We've got it's called the Mantis X, and they've got the Mantis X, and it's a little, I don't even know what to call it. It's like a little dongle, and it's I don't know what else to call it, but there's an attachment. It attaches to your Picatinny rail, and
it almost looks like an auxiliary laser or something really small.
Yeah, and it's really light, but it connects to your phone, and it can tell where your gun's pointed. It can tell, how much your gun moves as you pull the trigger, and as that, trigger clicks and actuates, it can tell how much you've moved the gun, and can help
it's got
you.
A couple accelerometers or something inside there that just knows. It just knows if you move that gun while you're pressing the trigger. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's like black magic, but I mean, they're so sensitive. I mean, and it'll actually it'll show you like the line of like where you were holding that gun and where that gun was pointed exactly when you pulled the trigger. And, like I said, it works with your phone, so you can, keep track of what you're doing. And it works whether you're dry firing or live firing, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And they're not terribly expensive. They're like, what, $120 or something? I can't remember for sure. They're not terribly expensive.
Yeah, it's about $150. They just came out with a new one too. I think the version 2.0, which is bigger and better and badder in every way. I really want to try to review one of these, because our own Academy director, Jessica, recommends them to a lot of our new shooters. And if you think about it, I mean, let's say you're saving up to buy a gun, maybe you just take 20% of that, or 30% of that gun fund, and buy a Mantis X. You can use that on any single any firearm you have at home, as long as it has a rail on it.
As long as it has a rail, and they really are cool. Like, I think it's worth the money. I don't own one. It doesn't mean I don't want one.
Right. Same.
It's just I just haven't taken advantage of having them there in hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the process of actually going out and getting one and learning how to use it takes time. But I mean, you could even get simpler than that. You can, let's say you have an office or, a spare room at your home or whatever. You can tape up a target, onto your wall. And who was talking about this? Jim Love was talking about doing this at home. He'll tape a target on his wall, and then he will practice mag changes. He'll stand over his bed and drop the mags onto his bed while he's doing mag changes. And,
awesome.
But that's all you need is a target. You need something to focus on. Obviously, you want to keep your ammunition in a different room than where you're dry firing, so you make sure you don't have any, negligent discharges.
And I think we've talked about dry fire practice before. Maybe it's been a while. But I think it's important to not only absolutely keep your ammunition nowhere near you, it needs to be in a different room, but I think you almost need to set up a designated place and a designated amount of time to do it, 15 minutes or so, and that's it. And once that's done, you're done for the day.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if let's say it's every Thursday at 7:00 after dinner or something, you have your kind of routine. If you can even it's just like a workout routine. If you manage to build your dry fire practice routine into your week one way or another, you'll know when to start, you'll know when to end, and it's just simple. Then you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. And I really think, like I say, that's super important. Dry fire, absolutely, but do it safely. Don't dry fire at your TV and then just kind of forget about it while you're eating a pizza, watching TV late at night, because you're going to end up throwing a magazine or something in there and forgetting.
Yeah, because let's say it's your carry gun, for example, and so you put your carry gun maybe down on the table and you eject the magazine that you usually carry with that has your hollow points in it, and you're eating dinner or you're messing around or whatever, you're not thinking about it, and you want to do a mag change, and you absentmindedly grab the mag full of hollow points, and then you put a hollow point through your TV, and Lord knows what's, even beyond your television, because I guarantee you it'll go through the TV and through the drywall.
And hopefully that's it.
But realistically, it'll probably keep going. It'll
keep going for farther than you want to have to deal with.
Yeah, so make sure that ammo's in a separate room, and make sure your magazines are completely empty, especially if you're going to be doing mag changes or anything like that. But I think that's a really good idea is, dedicate, some time every week, whether it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, build it as part of your routine. Just like, after shooting, coming home and cleaning and lubing your guns up, then you don't even have to think about it. I think the less like conscious effort, like any other habit, the less conscious effort you need to make it happen, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep it simple, right? The KISS method. Just keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
And we mentioned, you brought up maintenance. That is probably when most people accidentally shoot themselves in their foot or their hand or whatever, is their maintenance on their firearms. Same rules apply. You do not clean your gun with a full magazine on the table, or you shouldn't even do it where you have ammunition, honestly. You should be in a completely separate place. That gun should be cleared before you even start any kind of maintenance.
Exactly. I mean, like, for example, I will, all my ammo is kind of kept in a spare room with, next to my safe, and just all kind of in the same room area. But I don't clean the guns there. I clean them out in the garage on the workbench because I know that no ammo is going to be there.
Right.
And it's really just that simple. So
yeah, don't do dumb.
Wise words from Steve Zimmerman, everybody. Don't do dumb. But also, even taking it a step back from dry firing, even, just the muscle memory of drawing from the holster. The draw stroke is one of those supremely important things that you cannot practice enough. I mean, Bill has talked about it in classes, and I think all of our instructors have, is, a good draw has to be safe and deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if maybe you're not dry firing, but maybe you're just practicing drawing from the holster, doing that will help, with your execution of shooting a gun properly. Yeah.
And when I was teaching, presenting a firearm out of the holster, I have a 5-step, and I think pretty much every instructor has a variation of that 5-step.
Sure.
And you need to really, you can probably learn it off YouTube, but you're not going to get the same benefit as being there with an instructor in the same room, in the same place, teaching you, seeing what's going wrong and trying to identify the situation and then helping you get better. A YouTube video just could perpetuate bad habits or unsafe habits.
Well, and you don't know what you're doing wrong unless somebody else is watching you. I mean, maybe if you're good enough, you can you record yourself and watch a video of it. But at the same time, if you have
But
somebody,
you may not even know what to look for.
Right. One of the things that I was dealing with my holster was my holster draw was I was bringing it up and then swinging it around laterally. And there's no reason to do that. That's a not an inefficient economy of motion. We've talked about that before, where you don't need to bring, you want to get the biggest effect for the lowest amount of energy and movement, because that ends up shortening the time it takes to complete these maneuvers. So,
right.
Bill was able to notice, okay, you're bringing this thing around after you draw it out of your holster. There's no reason to do that. Just try to bring it straight up, click it out and bring it forward, Mm-hmm. So that's why we always harp on training all the time, is that, that's where you're going to get those fine tune, that fine tuning to make, even if you have a good draw stroke, it's going to make it great after you get some training.
And, another thing I'd see a lot of people fail, whether it's, maybe not being as economical with their shoulder movement or wrist movement or whatever, is they tend, not everybody, but a lot of the times, where they would flag their support hand. So the position, position, I can't even say position, the position of their support hand or of your support hand is vital on that draw stroke.
Yeah. And that's why they always teach at Independent, or why we always teach at Independence, that you need to, hands want to do something at the same time together. So that's why you need to make sure your non-dominant hand is going to be doing something else, whether that's grabbing your shirt, moving it up, towards your chest, wherever you want to put it. There's a couple different schools of thought on that, but, doing something with it so it's not just sitting there, because also I think there's a natural tendency to want to bring your hands together. But if you do that at the wrong time, like you said, you can flag your support hand. And if you are in a stressful situation and your finger's on that trigger before you're even on the sights, you could put a round through your hand before the fight even starts.
And that would put a big spanner in the gears right there.
Yeah, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage at that point.
If you're already bleeding before the gunfight started, it's a bad guy's win right there.
That's bad news bears. So,
excuse me, I'm eating Rice Krispie treats. I'm sorry.
Oh wow, the dinner of champions.
It tastes so good.
Staying healthy. So, and so the reason I don't think we maybe got into the why of this, but the reason why we're talking about all this and why it's so important is that shooting is a perishable skill. We've talked about it before, but it is and just like any other kind of skill, if you haven't ridden a motorcycle in a while, if you haven't played basketball in a while, or maybe you go on vacation, you come back to work and you realize it takes a little bit longer to get back into the groove of things, like for woodworking, for example. If you don't do it every day, even taking a week off or something, you're not going to be as good as a place that you were when you were regularly practicing.
100%. And that's what I saw when I went shooting is, I used to be okay at skeet shooting, like not 100% by any means, but definitely better than 24%.
I'm embarrassed for you.
Yeah, it was pretty sad. In fact, the first two stages, I didn't hit one at all. Well,
and that's got to be frustrating too. And then you get frustrated, and then and honestly, if you want to keep going with it, getting frustrated with something like that can lead to unsafe gun handling.
Mm-hmm. It really does,
because you're not thinking about it. You're just frustrated, and you want to do something. So you're going to either skip steps or break, safety rules.
Yeah. And that's a reality of it all. If you get to where you knew you could do it at one point, and then you could do it if you maybe were a little less safe, like you're saying, you're putting yourself and others at risk. So, perishable skill, 100%. That shooting, and I'm not the best shooter. I used to shoot a lot. When I very first started in the whole gun industry, I probably shot at least a magazine a night, at least. Which
is great.
Yeah, I got to be pretty good, pretty proficient, even out to 25 yards. And a lot of people don't believe me, but I was shooting dime-sized targets at 25 yards with my 17. I'm not kidding. Like, I believe it. I could do it, but now I probably couldn't do it to save my life.
And that's an interesting choice of words, don't you think?
Yeah. Now, could I defend myself at a closer range? Yeah. Could I still hit a postcard size at, 25, 30 feet? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could. But that doesn't matter. What matters is I'm letting a life-saving skill slip because I haven't taken a priority to it.
Exactly, 100%. And actually, you brought up a good point too, about the operating things not safely and breaking safety rules or whatever. Something that was interesting that happened in the advanced class, which relates to fatigue and having a dedicated starting and stopping time for your training. Fatigue can really wear on you, and then you don't think about it as much. I can't remember. Somebody had a story about, I think they were training for like 6 or 8 hours outside in the heat, shooting, 1,000 rounds all day or something. And, you get fatigued and your mind isn't, thinking as clearly, and you're not thinking about the safety rules. And, somebody shot themselves in the ass to put it bluntly. But for the advanced class, we were shooting for 2-3 hours, shooting a couple hundred rounds, in one shot, which is, some of the most I've ever shot in one go. And, towards the end, I was feeling confident. I was feeling comfortable, but I was also getting kind of tired. And it was like the last stage. I'm like, okay, I'm going to totally rock this one, blah, 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 blah. And drew from the holster real fast. And I got a round off, I think, before I even had my sights on target. And It wasn't necessarily unsafe or anything like that. I knew it went downrange, but I completely missed the paper and and Bill pointed it out. I'm like, geez, I need to be cognizant of things that are going on in my head, and be cognizant of how tired I am. And that's why I think too, they talk about going slow and being slow is smooth and smooth is fast, because if you try to go too fast, you could probably end up breaking a safety rule.
Yeah. And it happens. I've seen it happen. Let's see. Have I seen it happen in a class before? I know I've seen it just regular shooting on the range. I don't know if I've ever seen a real blatant, any kind of accidental discharge in a class. That when I've seen people rattle off rounds like you're saying, early, but it was still in a safe direction.
Yeah, and that was even enough to scare me. Even okay, let's slow down, let's consider that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we've seen people. At least I know you and I have seen video of people that maybe have a hair trigger on their revolver and they maybe pop 2 rounds off instead of 1 and take out a target,
or you could be
rather a target retriever.
Yeah, well, he's the only one that's. No, how did he say? He's qualified. You're talking about that guy in the video teaching those people how to shoot a revolver.
Yeah, I'm a qualified instructor. Everything's cool, and he pops one off right into the ceiling.
And then they say, "Did you mean to do that?" Oh yeah, I meant to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, but then there's also, and I don't know if we should maybe say this or not, but there was something similar that happened at Independence where somebody put a hole through a target retriever with a revolver.
Yeah, he made a mess. I think it was a 500, right? I think that's what it was.
Yeah. If you go into the tactical range and you look at, I think it's like 15 or 16, you can still see the hole
that
in the ceiling.
Bless his heart.
And as we know from talking with Jared, those things are not cheap.
Yeah. No, they are not.
So if you're at a range that maybe you're a member of or something, they're going to make you pay for that target.
Yeah, and you don't want to have to pay for that. That's not the same as it's not the same as a sponsorship.
Yeah, this is my official lane now. I paid for it,
despite what you think.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, and I mean, honestly, you'd more than likely get booted from the range too if that ever happened.
I would kick you out, and probably forever.
Yeah, that's a lifetime ban. So you want to make sure you're staying safe, and if you're tired or, we've talked about guns and alcohol or drugs not mixing and, all that kind of stuff. It's common sense, but it does bear repeating because common sense ain't so common.
No, not anymore.
So, but yeah, that's training. And it's something you need to consistently and consciously make part of your routine, just like working out or just like a hobby, any other hobby or anything. You need to make sure you're consistently working on it, improving it, maintaining your skills. Taking a class and then waiting 6 months and then taking another class is not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
You need to make some time to dry fire at home, to, go to the range, as often as you can financially and time wise. And, because it's a life-saving skill, like Steve said.
And so here's what I would suggest. You kind of brought up the whole exercise routine or whatever. Take some time with your dry fire practice. Like I say, modern guns, you're okay to dry fire practice. So take one of those 2 or 3 days a week and say, today is just holster day, right? All I'm doing is just holster work the whole day.
Oh, sure.
Or the whole practice. And then maybe the other day you work on clearing a stovepipe malfunction, or some kind of a weapons malfunction, learning how to clear that, or a magazine switch or whatever. And then just dedicate each dry fire practice to a particular part. I don't know what the best, what I'm trying to say? One particular part of the whole thing of gun training. And then,
well, it's just like training different muscle groups, where you have leg day or arm day, core day, back day, whatever. You want to do the same thing with shooting. And with your dry fire practice, like working on trigger control. One drill that a lot of people like to talk about is putting a penny or some kind of coin on your front sight to keep that that gun from moving. And you want to keep that penny or whatever coin you put on that front sight, and you want to keep it steady for that whole trigger press up to and including the break.
Yep. And that can be tricky, especially if it's a crummy trigger.
Or a small sight.
Yeah.
Or a small gun too.
And maybe if it's like a JFAM revolver or something, that penny's not going to fit on the sight. Just really slow down and be really deliberate with your trigger press and watch that front sight the entire time. And you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yep. It just takes time and repetition. I mean, I don't think we've said it yet, but, world-class competitors shoot and drive, they shoot tens of thousands of rounds, which, every year, which we can't do, unfortunately.
I wish.
Yeah, right. But they dry fire, probably just as much, if not more.
Oh, I bet for every live fire, it's 100 dry fire triggers. I bet you.
Oh, I would agree. And that's where the difference comes in. And that's that familiarity and that, competency with that gun, and that's, and to bring up, go back to the knowing the equipment and trusting your own equipment. That's why different competitors use certain guns and have their guns set up certain ways. If it was a competition between 3 world-class shooters and you told them to all switch guns, I'm sure they do okay because they're world-class shooters, but they're not going to do nearly as good as if they had, their own guns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're consistent with their equipment and they train with their equipment.
Mm-hmm. Because let's say let's say it's a Smith & Wesson and a CZ and a Glock, and, all 3 grip angles are different. All 3, triggers are different. Even the magazine capacity can be different. And so if you, are used to having 15 plus 1, and maybe you've got 12 plus 1, that's going to throw you 6 kinds of off.
Yeah, and then you're dealing with the recoil because they're all going to recoil just a little different. And then you just got to get used to what you carry. And John Lovell, we talk a lot about John Lovell. He one of the videos I was watching is he just switched everything to one particular brand of firearm, and that's it. Not that firearm is the best in the world, even though it's a Glock is what he was switching to.
Well, and he even says that, it's not maybe the best in the world, but, he trains, with like all different kinds of Glocks because all the magazines fit together. Just the cross compatibility between Glock, is great. And I'll say that.
And it was just that, not that he likes Glock more than anything else. It might be, might not be, but that's just what he's the most comfortable with compared to the other brands. And it's probably the most common across the world in the realm of handguns. And so why not?
Right. Well, and I think that also leads to that it's not, better equipment isn't necessarily going to make you better. It's better to work with what you have and spend money on training with that. And the skills that you build are then more easily transferable to another gun.
Yeah, I agree. It gets that way. I mean, I've started with a I started with Springfield and then, worked my way through. And not that I don't like Springfield. I got a couple Springfields. I think they make a great gun, despite what maybe some of the listeners out there have a malice towards them because of some of their political views.
Prejudices.
But prejudice, I guess.
Oh, sure.
But they build a good gun. It's a great gun, and the two that I have never failed me. I just happen to like the way that my Glocks feel better in my hand.
And that's the thing is, if you are new to shooting, certain subtleties such as grip angle and trigger press and recoil and bore axis, that stuff's not going to matter as a new shooter. Just you have to get the fundamentals down first. So, buying the best gun you can afford to train with, I think, is really the best thing you can do, rather than worrying about whether it's a Glock or a CZ or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and you can buy a 22 and train your guts out with a 22, and then once you get those fundamentals down and you're good at dealing with whatever small recoil impulse, and you're getting your sights on and your triggers press is fantastic, then you can move up to another gun. And that's just. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, but
that's a great point too, is that, people like to argue caliber, 45, 49, whatever. But if you have the fundamentals down, you should be able to shoot any caliber, no problem, or relatively well, So if you start on a 22, there's no shame or prejudice, or stigma against doing that. One of the first guns I ever had was a Ruger Mark III, which I still have, and I love shooting that gun. When we were doing competitions and stuff, I loved shooting that gun in competitions. The only reason I stopped shooting with it was because I would hit a plastic bowling pin 2 or 3 times with rounds, and they wouldn't move the bowling pin.
Well, you just keep shooting in the exact same spot. Eventually, it'll move.
Right, but I only have 10 rounds, too, on top of that. And other people have 12, 15, 17, whatever,
Yeah.
It's not a tricked out Mark III, although I wish it was. I could probably spend more on aftermarket parts for it than the gun itself, easily.
Yeah, Tactical Solutions, baby.
Tactical Solutions, Volquartsen, any of those guys, man.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's why, consistent training is so important. And, if you have any questions or any drills that you think that help you, or anything that we missed, you should let us know. Podcast@iishooting.com. Message us at Facebook.com or Instagram.com at Range-Minded Podcast. Let us know what you do to train.
Absolutely.
So we'll close on that, I think, for now. And
I'm going to throw out another promo. I haven't said it for a while. So as you may or may not know, I'm pro staff with Ride On. So
yeah, it's been a couple episodes. You are.
Yeah, we haven't talked about it for a while. So the thing about Ride On scopes is they're affordable, and I think they have good quality glass. And I'm not just saying that, because they welcomed me into the family. Like, this is legitimately honest. I'm not that I'm trying to sell stuff, but that they're, for what you're paying for and what you're getting, I think it's a great value. We carry them in at the store. Come take a look at them. Compare them side by side to some of the more expensive scopes. You realize that, hey, this glass is awesome.
Well, and we wouldn't carry them unless they were quality either.
Yeah, so correct. So jump out of the store, see what you like. In fact, if you do any online shopping, you can use the promo code. So you go to rideonoptics.com, right? That's their website.
Right. RITON.
Yep. You can jump onto rideonoptics.com. And if you find something you like and you use promo code S, capital S, ZIMMERMAN, you can save 15% on anything on that website. So
which is pretty awesome.
Hey, 15%, man, that adds up after a while.
Yeah, and we'll have to do a post on our Instagram about that too. So then, in case you forget, you can just check us out at Range Minded Podcast. And we got to have Jason back on from Right On. He was a good guy. That's what I said, Justin.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
That's what I said. Yeah, we got to have Justin back from Right On Optics. He's a good guy, and he knows his scopes.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun too. He's a lot of fun to talk to. So.
Yeah, so we'll do that, and we got some more fun stuff in store as well. So, but yeah, check out Right On Optics, RITON optics.com, and capital S ZIMMERMAN. Get yourself a Right On scope.
Yep, right on, guys.
So we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.
Have fun.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook.
or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.